The dining table had always been my mother's stage. It didn't matter whether it was a birthday, a holiday, or just another ordinary night whenever the family gathered around food. She became louder, sharper, more certain of her authority. That evening was no different. Plates were passed around, glasses clinked, and the familiar hum of forced cheer filled the room. To anyone watching from outside, we looked like a normal family enjoying dinner together, but I knew better. I sat at the far end of the table, back straight, hands folded neatly in my lap, already bracing myself. I'd learned over the years that family dinners weren't about warmth for me. They were about endurance. Say too much and I'd be mocked. Say too little and I'd be judged, so I stayed quiet the way I always did. My mother cleared her throat. That single sound made my stomach tighten. She glanced at my siblings first, smiling proudly as she asked about their jobs, their plans, their small achievements. Each answer earned a nod, a word of praise, sometimes even a laugh. Then her eyes turned toward me. The smile disappeared, and you, she asked, voice already edged with disappointment. Still doing whatever it is you do. A few people chuckled softly. I forced a small smile and said something vague. Something safe, I always did. I didn't mention the long hours, the stress, the responsibilities. I didn't mention the sacrifices. She sighed dramatically and put her fork down. You know, she said loudly, at your age, I had already built a life, a family, stability. She shook her head. But you, still nothing solid, still no real success. The room went quiet. I felt heat crawl up my neck. My fingers curled under the table as I stared at my plate, suddenly unable to taste the food in front of me. Then she said it, you're a failure. The word landed like a glass shattering inside my chest. No one defended me. No one interrupted. My siblings avoided my eyes. An aunt shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Someone took a sip of water, pretending not to hear. I wanted to disappear. I'd heard insults before, whispers, side comments, passive-aggressive remarks, but never like this. Never so openly, never in front of everyone. My heart pounded as memories rushed in. Late nights working, skipped meals, stress headaches, the quiet transfers from my bank account to hers whenever she called and said she was short this month. Failure. I swallowed hard. My mother kept talking, as if she hadn't just crushed something fragile and precious inside me. I don't even know what you're doing with your life, she continued. You depend on family too much. You should be ashamed. That was the moment something shifted. Not anger, not rage, clarity. I realized how tired I was, tired of being silent, tired of shrinking, tired of carrying weight no one acknowledged. I realized that the shame she was trying to hand me didn't belong to me. I slowly lifted my head. My voice, when I spoke, surprised even me. It didn't shake. It didn't rise. It was calm. If I'm such a failure, I said gently, then who's been paying your bills? The words hung in the air like smoke. Forks paused mid-motion. Conversations died instantly. My mother blinked, clearly not expecting resistance, certainly not in front of everyone. What did you say? She snapped. I met her eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't look away. I asked. I repeated, just as calmly, who's been paying your electricity, your rent, your medical bills? Her face flushed. Don't start making things up. I'm not, I said quietly. My heart was pounding now, but I didn't stop. Every month, for years, I've paid. I never said anything because you're my mother. The silence grew heavier. My siblings stared at the table. Someone cleared their throat. The air felt thick, suffocating. My mother opened her mouth, then closed it again. For a brief second, I saw fear flash across her face, not fear of me, but fear of the truth being seen. You shouldn't talk back, she said weakly. Family helps family. I nodded slowly, exactly, but family doesn't humiliate the one who's holding everything together. No one spoke after that. Dinner ended awkwardly. Food barely touched, laughter gone. People left early, excuses muttered at the door. My mother avoided my eyes as she stood up, gathering plates with trembling hands. I remained seated long after everyone else had gone. That night at that table, something finally broke, but it wasn't me. It was the silence I had lived inside for far too long. After that dinner, I didn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every expression, every moment when my voice had finally stepped out of the shadow. My mother's shocked silence haunted me more than her insults ever had. It was the sound of someone realizing they no longer controlled the story. By morning, exhaustion sat heavy in my bones, but clarity stayed. I hadn't always been brave. In fact, I'd spent most of my life mastering the art of being unnoticed. I learned early that being the quiet one kept the peace. While my siblings argued and demanded, I adapted. While they were praised, I worked. While they lived loudly, I survived silently. I remembered the first time my mother asked for money. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed tightly, eyes tired. Just this once, she said, "The bill is overdue. I'll pay you back next month." I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money that same night. Next month came and went. Then another request, then another. Over time, the requests stopped sounding like favors and started sounding like expectations. "You know I need help. You're the responsible one." What kind of child lets their mother struggle? I became the solution to problems no one wanted to solve. I paid without announcements, without recognition. When relatives praised my siblings for small achievements, I smiled and clapped along, hiding the truth that I was quietly covering rent, electricity, and medical bills. My name never came up. It never needed to. As long as the problem disappeared, so did I. What hurt the most wasn't the money. It was the erasure. My mother would complain loudly about stress, about how hard life was, about how no one supported her. She would say these things while holding a phone I'd paid for, sitting under lights I kept on, cooking food I had bought. And still, at family gatherings, I was introduced as the one who hadn't figured life out yet. I started to question myself. Maybe I was a failure. Maybe success only counted if it looked impressive to others. Maybe quiet responsibility didn't matter. I worked harder, thinking it would change something. Longer hours, fewer breaks. I canceled plans, ignored my own needs, told myself sacrifice was temporary. It never was. The night after the dinner, I opened my banking app again, not to show anyone, but to face myself. Rows of transactions stared back at me, a timeline of loyalty and silence. I scrolled through years of proof that I had been present in every crisis, even when I was absent from every compliment. My hands trembled. I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. I wasn't invisible because I lacked value. I was invisible because my reliability made everyone comfortable. They didn't have to worry. They didn't have to step up. I would handle it. I thought about all the times my mother had praised my siblings for being independent, while calling me dependent for staying close. The irony burned. I had stayed not because I couldn't leave, but because I felt responsible. That responsibility had turned into a chain. And chains only break when someone decides they're done bleeding. The next day, my mother called me. Her tone was softer than usual, careful. "About last night," she said. "You embarrassed me." I closed my eyes. "I embarrassed you," I repeated quietly. "You didn't have to say those things in front of everyone." She continued. "Family matters should stay private." I almost laughed. "So should sacrifices," I said before I could stop myself. She went silent, then she sighed. "You know I didn't mean it when I called you a failure, but you meant every time you accepted my money." I replied. Her voice tightened. "Are you saying you won't help anymore?" That was the real question, not about feelings. Not about respect, about money. I didn't answer right away. I looked around my small room. The cheap furniture, the unpaid dreams, the exhaustion that had settled into the walls. I thought about how much I'd postponed my own life to keep hers running. "I need time," I finally said. She didn't like that. I could hear it in her breath. "Don't be dramatic," she snapped. "You owe me." The words cut deeper than the insult at dinner. Oh, that night, I understood the truth fully. I wasn't her child at the table. I was her invisible provider. And for the first time, I allowed myself to wonder what would happen if I stopped. The house felt different the next time we all gathered. It was quieter, tense in a way that had nothing to do with awkward jokes or unfinished arguments. The air carried expectation, like everyone sensed that something unresolved was waiting to explode. I arrived early, not out of habit, but out of intention. For once, I wasn't there to endure. I sat in the living room while my mother moved around the kitchen, avoiding my eyes. She spoke to others, laughed too loudly, busied herself with unnecessary tasks. When she finally looked at me, her expression hardened, as if she had decided that denial was safer than truth. Dinner was served, we sat, plates filled, silence stretched. My uncle cleared his throat. So, he said, trying to sound casual, "Everyone good after last time." My mother jumped in immediately. "Of course," she said, "some people just exaggerate when they're emotional." I felt my pulse steady instead of spike. "I wasn't emotional," I said. "I was honest." Her fork clattered against her plate. "Here we go again," she muttered. I reached into my bag and took out my phone. The motion alone made my siblings glance up. They knew something was coming. "I don't want to argue," I said evenly. "I just want the truth clear." Once, and my mother laughed sharply. "You always think you do more than you actually." I turned the screen toward the table, no shouting. No dramatic gestures, just proof. Lines of transactions filled the screen. Dates, amounts, descriptions. Rent, utilities, medical bills, repairs, groceries, month after month, year after year. The room went completely still. My sister leaned forward, eyes wide. "Wait, you paid that." My brother swallowed, all this time. My mother stared at the phone like it might accuse her out loud. "That's not what it looks like," she said quickly. "You helped sometimes, that's all. Sometimes," I asked gently. "I paid more than half your living expenses for 4 years." The words landed heavy. No one spoke. For the first time, I wasn't the quiet one absorbing shame. I was the one holding the mirror, and no one liked what it reflected. My uncle shifted in his seat. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" I smiled sadly, because I thought love was supposed to be quiet. My mother's face tightened. "So, what is this?" she demanded. "You trying to humiliate me now?" "No," I said. "I'm trying to stop being humiliated." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. I took a deep breath. This was the part I'd practiced in my head all week. "I'm not paying anymore." The words were simple. Final, my mother's head snapped up. "You can't be serious." "I am." She laughed nervously. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't just abandon your family." "I'm not abandoning anyone," I replied. "I'm stepping back from being used." The room erupted not in shouting, but in whispers. My siblings exchanged looks. Someone muttered, "We didn't know." That was the truth that hurt them most. They hadn't known because they hadn't asked. Because my sacrifice had made it easy not to care, my mother stood up suddenly. "After everything I've done for you," she cried. "This is how you repay me." I stayed seated. "Everything you've done for me," I said slowly, "or everything I've done for you that you took credit for." Her face crumpled, not with guilt, but with panic. The bills, the consequences, the loss of control. I gathered my things and stood. "I won't argue," I said quietly. "The transfer stopped today. You'll need to figure things out." She looked around the table, waiting for someone to side with her. No one did. As I walked toward the door, my sister finally spoke. "You didn't deserve that." I paused. It wasn't an apology, but it was something. Outside, the air felt lighter, colder, real. My phone buzzed before I even reached my car. "Mom, you'll regret this." I stared at the message for a long moment. Then I deleted it. For the first time in my life, the truth wasn't just spoken. It was enforced, and nothing terrifies manipulators more than consequences delivered calmly. When I stopped paying, the silence didn't last long. At first, it was small things, missed calls, unread messages, the kind of quiet that isn't peaceful but waiting. Then the cracks began to show. A week later, my mother called in a panic, her voice tight and unfamiliar. "The electricity company sent a warning." She said, "Why didn't you tell me you canceled?" "I didn't cancel," I replied calmly. "I just stopped paying." She went silent, as if the distinction offended her. "You know, I can't handle these things alone." She snapped. "You're being cruel." Cruel, the word used to shatter me. This time it slid off. I handled them for years, I said. Alone, she hung up. More calls followed. Messages layered with guilt, anger, and desperation. Some accused me of being ungrateful. Others tried softness, fake apologies wrapped in nostalgia. Not once did she ask how I was. Not once did she acknowledge what she'd taken. I didn't reply. For the first time, I chose peace over explanation. Weeks passed. My life began to feel lighter. The constant anxiety of checking my bank balance faded. I slept better. I ate without calculating what bill might come next. I started saving real savings, not emergency patches for someone else's chaos. Then I heard the stories. Relatives whispered that I'd changed, that I'd abandoned my mother, that success had made me arrogant. I smiled. They had mistaken my silence for obedience for so long that my boundaries looked like cruelty. One afternoon, my sister called. She's struggling, she said carefully. She says you've turned your back on her. I looked out the window, watching sunlight spill across a world that finally felt like mine. Did she say thank you? I asked. There was a pause. No. Then nothing's changed. I said. Months later, my mother showed up at my door. She looked smaller, older, not defeated, just exposed. The mask of control had slipped, and she didn't know what to do without it. I was hard on you, she said, eyes fixed on the floor, but you didn't have to do this. I studied her face, searching for regret. I didn't find it. You were hard on me. I said softly because it benefited you. Her lips trembled. I'm your mother, and I was your lifeline. I replied. You should have treated me like both. She asked for help again. Not reconciliation, not healing. Help, I said no, and that was my revenge, not yelling, not humiliation. Not public shame, just refusal. I closed the door gently, hands steady, heart calm. After that, things changed fast. My mother figured things out because she had to. My siblings stepped in, some reluctantly, some resentfully. The burden shifted where it always should have been, and me, I thrived. I took risks I'd been too afraid to take before. I invested in myself. I built a life that didn't revolve around proving my worth to someone who refused to see it. Sometimes, late at night, guilt tried to creep back in, but then I remembered the dinner table, the word failure. The years of silence, and I reminded myself, love that demands self-destruction isn't love. The sweetest revenge wasn't watching her struggle. It was watching myself succeed without her permission. I didn't become louder. I became free, and that freedom. That was everything she never wanted me to have.